there, Karen O'Connor of SingWise.com here. Somebody recently asked me to post a video on singing in tune. And this person talked a little bit about how he's able to sing in tune for the most part, but then sometimes there are certain parts of certain melodies that he has difficulties memorizing and kind of getting into his head. And this is actually a pretty common problem with some singers. And so I thought I would go ahead and talk a little bit about what causes pitch problems in singers. Most problems with pitchiness really boil down to technical errors. Sometimes it's just a matter of overall technical underdevelopment, and sometimes we just have little, we'll say, glitches in our technique. So for the most part, we can sing on tune, but then every now and then, we hit a sour note, and that's perfectly normal. So let's talk a little bit about some of the technical issues that will cause us sometimes to go off pitch. The first cause is poorly managed breath. In particular, if we have very sudden increases or decreases in subglottal pressure, that can cause our pitch to go sharp or flat. So it's really important for us to be able to develop really good control over those subglottal pressures. The second technical reason why singers might go off in pitch has to do with registration. And oftentimes singers get locked into this sort of static laryngeal function in which they're not allowing their vocal instruments to sort of readjust for pitch and for register. They get sort of stuck in this same coordination as they move higher, and then they do what I call sort of hitting a pitch wall. So they keep singing the scale and they keep going up higher and higher, but that top note is not getting any higher and they just keep hitting that wall. And so really they need to learn to be able to allow a little bit more flexibility with their instruments. And then that really brings me to the third reason, the technical reason, why singers will sometimes go off in pitch. And that really has to do with resonance. And resonance and registration are very, very closely tied to each other. So there's an ever-changing relationship between the resonance frequencies of the vocal tract, the formants, that is the natural frequencies of the resonator tube. Those frequencies change depending on how we shape that tube, and the harmonics of the sung pitch. And sometimes we get a sort of clashing of the formant frequencies, the frequencies of the resonator tube, and those harmonics. And that can create what I call sort of the perception of pitchiness, that the fundamental frequency is actually right. But because these formants and harmonics are not getting along very well, we can get a sound that's a little bit sharp or a little bit flat in perception, even though the fundamental frequency is on. And that's because the resonance balance may have a preponderance of higher or lower overtones, so it sounds a little bit sharp when we have too many high overtones represented and not enough lower ones, or vice versa, flat when we have too many of the lower overtones represented and not enough of the high ones. So the pitch isn't really off, but there's something off about the tuning. So remember that vowels have intrinsic pitch. That means that they have their own kind of unique pitch, a pitch that's unique to the individual vowel, and that pitch is determined by the vowel's unique formant frequencies. And so if we're shaping our vowels poorly, if we have poor vowel definition, we may also get this sound as though the vowel is just slightly off, and the listener might not be able to quite pinpoint exactly what's off about it because the fundamental frequency sounds like it's on, but there's just a slight discord, we'll say. But that could very well be what it is. So if your pitch is ever so slightly off, we're talking like a quarter or an eighth of a tone, it could very well be that you are not getting that vowel squarely in pitch in terms of its intrinsic pitch, and that you may need to make some slight adjustments to your resonator tract and define that vowel a little bit more purely, we'll say. In addition to these technical faults that may cause us to go off in pitch, we also have a lot of stuff going on up here. So we have these sort of psychological, mental hurdles to overcome when it comes to singing, in particular, how we think about pitch movement. I've already posted a video on adjusting how we think about the directionality of pitch, and it makes a big difference because if we're really thinking, ooh, that note is very, very low, we're going to be likely to reach down for that low note. If we're thinking it's really high, we're going to be reaching for that high note. And then we start making some weird adjustments sometimes in our vocal tracts, these sort of counterproductive adjustments. And so we want to make sure that whatever we're doing technically in response to those pitch movements is going to land us squarely on pitch, on the desired pitch. And so if we have things like a fear of heights, in which we're afraid of singing high notes because our technique's not maybe developed enough, or we're worried about what other people are going to think, or we're worried about hitting a bad note, then we're probably going to undershoot that pitch. And likewise, if we're worried about this low note that we're not so sure about, we might kind of undershoot it as well and end up a little bit sharp. Now, of course, there are some other things that could cause us to go flat or sharp in pitch, one of which is amusia, which is tone deafness, but surely that's a really, really rare condition. But there may be some other neurological or cognitive challenges that singers face. I actually recently worked with a singer for a few months who had an issue with matching pitch and being able to remember pitch melodies. And she was able to recall melodies that she had been singing basically all her life, especially starting from childhood. Very familiar melodies to her, especially simpler melodies. But when it came time to learning a new melody or singing along to the radio, she really had a difficult time learning those melodies and matching pitch. And the conclusion that we came to was that's just how her brain is hardwired. It's almost like how a dyslexic individual is able to learn how to read, but he or she needs to adopt different strategies and tools to help his or her brain make sense of what's on the page. So I kind of like to think of individuals like my student as being sort of musically dyslexic. And so we have to be a little bit creative and resourceful when it comes to trying to find ways to help her memorize melodies and be able to sing on tune, to be able to reproduce the pitches that are on the page. So individuals like this have to learn to work around their cognitive or neurological challenges. And yes, they're probably going to have to work much harder at this than the average singer out there. It's going to take them a little bit longer to be able to memorize song melodies, to be able to learn how to shape their instruments appropriately and tune their instruments appropriately for the pitches and the patterns that they're trying to sing. Now, I was thinking of stopping here because I know that you all have a lot of subscriptions to other channels similar to mine, and I want to be really considerate of your time, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I don't leave you hanging, that I give you a little bit here that you can go away with today, something to take home with you, some takeout.